Hey, my name is Bill Marion, and this is A Nose for Life. You're watching part 2 of a terrifying wilderness hiking experience away from the hot dog stand. That's a long title. You really need to watch part 1 before watching this video, and you can get there quickly by clicking the button on the top right-hand corner of your screen now. I'm assuming you're sticking around because you've watched part 1, and that's great, but you may have a few questions. First, yes, this really happened, and no, I'm not embellishing. And then there's the other side of this question, so what's the big deal? So what that you're 4 hours into the wilderness? It's a marked trail, just turn around. I admit it does sound that simple. But here are a few things to consider from the first video. Before I started down this trail, I had already been hiking a couple of hours to the fire detection tower, aka the hot dog stand, and back to the beginning of this trail. That's a pretty good workout. Listen, if you can go on a 2-hour mountain hike, then jump into another 4-hour mountain hike, and then hike another 4 hours after that without pausing, well, you're amazing and you should start your own YouTube channel. I probably won't watch it because I can't relate, but good for you. And finally, what was I thinking? I've already addressed this in the first video. I was banking on a road that I could take back and it would save me some time, and here's where it gets weird. Notice this sign, 85 is a road, and there were times that I was on this road, and there were times that it squeezed into this tiny trail. Here's the thing. Back in the 1990s, lots of old mountain roads were made to disappear all over the country in the name of conservation. The Forestry Service made these roads disappear by restricting access and allowing nature to reclaim the land. In the area I'm hiking, you could see places where there used to be old homesteads that go back hundreds or more years. Having seen things like this all over the Appalachian Mountains, it made sense that the trail I was on would eventually connect to a road that was still in service. And it turns out I was right. At the end of this video, I'll explain why even though I was right, I was still wrong. We're going to pick up right where we left off in the last video, right when I flopped on this tick-infested rock like a beach whale. I'm not trying to offend beaches, whales, or beached whales, but I think it's an accurate description. Now you might be asking, if I was so tired, why would I take the time to take a picture of a rock on which I flopped? I'm sure you know that when you take pictures with your smartphone, you can turn on location services so that you can know where you were at when you took that picture. I knew it would be important to me later when and if I made it back, and yes, that sounds morbid, but I was in pretty bad shape at the time. I was experiencing muscle failure, or the point where the neuromuscular system can no longer produce adequate force to overcome a specific workload. People train to muscle failure all the time. It's not the end of the world. The truth is that I'm in better shape now than I was during the last half of my 30s. The problem, however, is that at my age, recovering from muscle failure takes a lot longer. I knew what was happening. What worried me is that there wasn't enough time to recover before dark, and one way or the other, I had a long way to go. I was exhausted. And by the way, I had no matches or a 99-cent lighter to start a fire. I had already soaked my dry change of clothes with sweat. I was experiencing muscle failure. I felt like I couldn't take another step. I started facing the reality that I might have to stay the night there. But I quickly realized that was a bad option too. Bear and rattlesnakes aside, the elevation here is high. I knew that in just a few hours, the wind hitting my soaked clothes would drop my core temperature. Even in the summer, at a high elevation with soaked clothes and no fire, yes, hypothermia is a concern, and I wasn't being paranoid. That's a real thing. I tried to be positive by thinking about my days in the infantry. You know, Bill, you've been through worse conditions than this. But look, folks, that was over 20 years ago.
It's all fun and games until the trail starts going straight uphill.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that I saw more bear that ran away before I could hit the record button. But while sitting on this ugly rock, my body was not cooperating. My legs were like jelly, and my back felt like it was locked into position. It felt like I had sat on that rock for hours, but it was more like 15 minutes. I ate almonds, and I continued drinking water. And then I started praying. First, I repented for my arrogance. I asked God to show me what else I could learn from my stupidity. Second, I prayed this simple prayer: God, forgive me for this mistake. Keep me safe, and that's when it hit me. God, help guide me back. I knew I had to go back the way I came. Since I wasn't stopping the video, I was facing about a 4-hour hike. It was 7:01, which meant that I had close to 2 hours of daylight left for a 4-hour hike. Even though I was in the woods, I was also hiking up and down a ridgeline, so on the tops of the mountains, sunset is extended. Something inside told me to start singing. I could barely talk, much less sing, but I did. I started singing at the top of my lungs almost the entire way back, and believe it or not, it put energy back in my legs and in my back that wasn't there before. Don't get me wrong, I was still in enormous pain, but I kept walking. I sung loud and obnoxiously. When the sun set, I had to use my cell phone flashlight because no, I didn't have a real flashlight. And let's be honest, a cell phone flashlight isn't really a flashlight. No matches, no lighter, Oh, and no moon. A dark night at the edge of a region that is known for having the darkest skies east of the Mississippi. You know, I may not have wanted a hot dog stand experience, but that's exactly what I had prepared for. And that's the real problem. My real mistake. Hiking in wilderness areas, well, it's serious. And it requires you to plan for anything, even your own stupidity. But more than that, a serious hiker knows his or her limits and would have turned around when it was time to turn around. No matches, no actual flashlight other than my cell phone. I guarantee that many of the people heading to the hot dog stand prepared as if they were hiking in the great wilderness. But not me. What makes hiking so fun for me is the adventure of not knowing what you're going to see around every corner. It's all about going where most people dare not go. But to play that game, you have to be disciplined in a way that others aren't disciplined. This was truly an epic fail, and not only was I paying for it in my body, but then you begin to think about all the things that could happen, and that's really scary. I figured I would make it back to the parking lot at 10:50. Has anyone ever told you how terrifying a screech owl sounds on a dark trail in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere? Well, it is. The forest was alive. I don't know who sent the memo, but every animal was moving and they couldn't care less that I was walking on that trail. They were moving around anyway. My cell phone is old. In fact, we're about to get new ones, but iPhones reach this certain age when the battery dies after about an hour. I heard it's a conspiracy or something, I don't know. Anyway, back in 2017, we bought a mobile cell phone charger and it's one of the best investments we've ever made. I don't know what I would have done without the cell phone light. I mean, seriously, it's not much of a flashlight, but it's all I had. There was no moon. It was pitch dark. I can't stress this enough. And then suddenly, my cell phone chimed, indicating a text. I had one bar. It was Carolyn. Very worried. We're coming to find you. I tried to respond, but the signal was on and then off again. She didn't get my response until much later. I can't tell you how thankful I was that Carolyn knew the general area I was hiking. How did she know this? Well, that's one of the things I did right. I didn't totally mess this up. You may or may not have picked up on this earlier, but I did have plenty of water, about 4 liters. However, for this type of hiking for this length of time, and given the weather, I could have used more. But by the end of the ordeal, I wasn't dehydrated, and I had a protein source too, a huge bag of almonds and even some honey roasted peanuts. This made a huge difference, and before I left, I made sure Carolyn knew where I was parking and the initial trail to the hot dog stand. I also gave Carolyn a time I'd be home. So when Crystal told Carolyn about my call a couple of hours earlier saying that I wouldn't be home until way after dark, Carolyn knew I was sending a code. Something has gone terribly wrong. Now, you might be thinking and maybe ready to comment about the dangers of hiking alone. Okay, it's true, you're not supposed to go into the forest alone. And while I take complete blame for this mishaps in the forest, I love hiking alone. I get it, it's safer to hike with other people, but I enjoy hiking alone sometimes, and that's a risk I'm willing to take. But if you're going to take that risk, you have to be disciplined in other areas. I had several scares along the trail. For example, I fell once and almost broke my cell phone and my face, which would have meant no flashlight and no face. I didn't get turned around, but I had to stop several times and make sure that I was still on the marked trail. I used the time to judge the distance I was walking while knowing that my pace had slowed a lot, and I was having to stop and rest about every 10 minutes. The terrain was relentless. I'm not saying that I blacked out or anything, but there are parts of the 4-hour return trip that I just don't remember. At 11:19, I heard Carolyn and Crystal calling my name. Finally, I was close to the parking lot. It was almost over. My voice was hoarse, not from thirst, but from singing most of the way back. No, seriously, I sung loudly the whole way back. There was something about singing that made the 4-hour journey possible. Carolyn and Crystal met me on the trail. They didn't know anything about the bears, the weakness, the pain, the fatigue, or anything about the journey. They just knew that something had gone horribly wrong. See, Daddy doesn't make mistakes like this. Only this time I did, and I made sure that they knew I'd made a mistake. I made a horrible decision that put me in a lot of danger, and I'm not going to let this happen again. So what would have happened if I kept walking instead of turning around? Well, I would have run into 85, maybe, provided that the trail runs straight into 85. At the pace I was having to walk, the sun would have been down by then or close to it. If the road wasn't maintained over the past spring, then it would have been hard to identify the road in the dark. If I had missed the road and kept walking, then it's possible, though highly unlikely, I would have reached Reddish Knob. But let's say I found the road. I could have followed 85 to Flagpole Knob and worked my way down, eventually back to Highway 33, but down the mountain and miles away from the parking lot. It wasn't what I had in mind. I was thinking this road, but even on the map, it just disappears. I haven't confirmed this yet, but the trail I was hiking is a part of 85, the road I was actually looking for. If I had followed the road down the mountain, it would have been a bigger disaster. It would have taken me twice or even 3 times as long just to get back to Highway 33. Just hiking back 4 hours spent all of the juice in my cell phone charger. So anything longer than 4 or 5 hours, well, I would have been hiking completely in the dark. But worse, that wasn't anywhere near the trail I told Carolyn I was hiking. That was a safety ace I was holding the entire time. In the event I went missing for whatever reason, by staying on one of the trails near the parking lot, I was giving myself a chance to be found. So I was right about the road, but so very wrong about its potential as a backup, which is why you don't gamble when you're mapless in a wilderness area. Walt Disney's vision for Adventureland and Frontierland was birthed when the U.S. was booming, and for many people, it felt like we were losing touch with our pioneering roots. It was as retro and tacky then as it is now, but I love it. I love it because it's nothing like the frontier, and it's nothing like an outdoors adventure. It's just make-believe, it's entertainment, and it's harmless. While at Magic Kingdom, our family will split up for a few hours to do our own thing, but then we always meet back at the castle or the hot dog stand. Dinner reservations are important and you can't be late. Eating together is important in our family, so we meet back at the castle, share our previous adventure, and go eat. Walt's hot dog stand is brilliant, and it changed theme parks forever. It brings people together, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Now, I don't need to be so critical about hot dog stands and national parks and national forests. It's good that people have a focal point and structure. I've learned my lesson too. Don't get me wrong, I'm sore. No, really, I feel like I have broken bones all through my body. My back is a mess and I can barely turn my neck. I hiked more than 8 miles over rugged, rocky terrain with constant changes in elevation. Look, if you're a constant hiker and you're always out there, I know that's nothing for you, but for me, it was a pretty big deal. I wasn't prepared for that. I was prepared for a hot dog stand. You know, I never panicked, but I knew I had placed myself in a terrible situation. It's a wake-up call, but I hope it serves a purpose. I hope that someone watching this might wake up and realize the risk of being unprepared while venturing away from the hot dog stand. If you really enjoyed this video, please share it on your Facebook page or post it on any of your favorite social media platforms. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Bill Marion, and this is A Nose for Life. Hey, if you have time, check out some of these other videos.